Hello world. Today we are going to talk about handling the forms in Vanilla.js and React. We're gonna implement a simple application, a simple form, as we can see, where when you hit submit, when you hit submit, you type something, you hit submit, it's shown up here. It's very simple, but the idea of our video is just to compare how to do this in three forms. First, by using of Vanilla.js, and second, by using the React hooks, and third, by using the React class component. So we're going to do the same form in three different ways. So let's get started, and we're gonna start using as above. Yes, we started using the vanilla method. Well, actually, the forms are um kind of something you use it to encourage the user to grab its input or something from the user, whether it's text, whether it's like an options for selecting stuff, or sometimes files, sometimes a lot of different things. Today we are going to talk only about the simple thing is the input tag, which is allows you to like grab the user text by using the keyboard. So first, after you do your header and your stuff, you start a form tag, and then some labels, some text, and then this is our input tag, which is taking here two attributes, the ID and the name. Well, the name is something like similar to the ID in its use, but as a reference for the input, but it has some different context where you use the name. Alright, then we have our next input, and then we have a button of type submit. Now we're gonna to talk about the JavaScript for handling this code. First, we are waiting the window to load. After that, we are grabbing the form that we uh, are working with, and then we are adding an event listener of the submit. Now, the form has an event of submit. There is a different way to go to listen to submit on submitting the form. For example, I can I can use a button here, but here I need to listen to the on click of this button. I can use the on submit attribute of the form itself. I also can use the action of the action attribute of the form, where I actually direct my form to the server or to another file, and in this case I need to add another input, third input, with the type of submit. So on submitting this third input, will execute the action of the tag. Alright, I'm using the simplest way, which is just adding an event listener of this form. So after that, we prevent the default behavior of the submitting, which is reloading the page. So I'm preventing the page from reloading. After that, we are selecting our two inputs values, and then this code actually is just for the showing. We just selecting our show box, and if there is already an h1 tag from the previous from the previous submit, just delete it. And then we are creating a new tag, a new h1 tag. I add the values of the both inputs to be as the inner text of this h1 tag, and then I select my show box and append that h1 tag to it. So this is it for the vanilla forms. I do have a whole video of coding this stuff, and I can refer it to you. Now let's transform to the React, and actually I'm gonna start by the forms with React hooks. So with React hooks, we start as usual by importing the React. After that, we import the useState function. At the beginning of our file, of our component, we always start by defining our state. Now in the using the React is a little bit different. You don't have to use the event listeners or the the get document by ID or stuff. You don't have to use them. I I didn't use them. I didn't try to use them actually in React, but I think that they might have a different behavior from what we think, because the idea of re-rendering and of the virtual DOM might have some interfering with the document object. So it's better just to use the recommend way, which is the state. So here we are actually starting by initializing an empty object that will contain the 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 value of the two input fields. After that, I need to initialize an empty string for the show, the content of the show element. Now you might don't need to do this, but it's better to just keep things simple. Now this is the code for handling the form. Let's start by creating our form tag, and then it has two input as usual. But notice there's something different here. I have the ID, I have the name, and I have the onChange. Now this onChange event, we use it here to like register or save our current value to our state. So onChange value whenever the state of this input or the text inside this input tag changes, I need to call this handle change. And simply this handle change is just setting the title, which is our empty object of the state, to be whatever the target of this event. You will actually notice we are using the name here. We don't use the ID. We use the name normally, and notice the idea of these two square braces. So it's just made the whatever inside as a variable inside our object, and then we assign to whatever the event target and the value of it. And before that, we are actually separating our previous object. So if we are changing the first name, we using this split operation, we are just keeping the last name as it is, and if we are changing the last name, we're keeping the first name as it is by using this three dots or split operations. Alright? Then after I finish changing my or editing my inputs, I need to submit. Well, here I have many ways to submit as it was in vanilla. I have, for example, I can use the button on click, or I can use the form. I can use the form on submit. I'm not sure if we can use an action here. I never use it. And you can also add a third input with type of submit, and you just submit that input. Alright, so on submit, I need to handle submit, which is simply setting the show, which is the third or the second state variable for the contest or the content that will be shown. So this to just setting that variable, that string, to be the concatenation of the first name with the last name, which in their turn are just grabbed from our input. Alright, so this is simple. Let's compare this one to the idea of class component in React. So here we have our class component, and as usual we start by importing React, and we need to import the component class as well from React. After that we define our class, which is form class, I call it here, which is extends the component. That means that it is inheriting whatever existed in the class component, which is a default class existed in React itself. After that we are using the constructor method, which is simply initialize our data, or initialize whatever data we are going to preserve from this class. So we are passing props to this constructor and calling the super props. Simply, this means that if you are passing props to this class component, just use them, tell this class to use them as their own props. So if I pass the props, I can just use it or access to them inside the class by using this props prop name. Alright. After that, I need to initialize the state, which is simply an object. So there's a state equal an object. It's important to notice that we have only one state variable called state, and it's an object. So everything inside is about a key value, a key value pair inside that state object, where in the React hooks we have the privilege, or we can uh, define more than one state variable, and we can use them with the names that we want. Here you need to initialize only one state object, and you do everything inside this object. So there is the idea of binding. I'm going to talk about it in a minute. And then, so we initialized our state. We need to initialize our form. Simply form tag, our input, second input tag, our button, and then our show our show box. All right, so here is symbol. We can also use the onChange for each input. We can notice the use of this to handle change. Like I'm calling the function handle change, which belongs to this class, right? So let's take a look at handle change, which is simply taking an event, preventing the default, and then this dot set state to be the same as we have in the previous component. We put our assigning um, assigning key inside this square brackets, and then we pass our target dot value. Notice we have the callback function of the set state, so we can just call whatever we want after the state has been changed. This function is not introduced yet in the React hooks, I think. And after that, we can, as we did before, we have 2-3 ways to listening to submit, and we're using the most obvious one on submit of the form, which on submit. This should handle submit. This is the function preventing default did state our show to be whatever the value of our two inputs concatenated together. And then we have added another step here, which is just emptying the value of the state, and in this case we need to add the value attribute to our input to be this dot state dot last name for the last name, and this dot state dot first name for the first name. And what this do is simply, after you submitting the form, just clear up the inputs. All right, I want to talk about something which is binding. Now, as you see in the hooks, just put the function and call it. Here in the class component, you need to bind the function to this class by using this redundant code, which is this to the name of the function to be this of the name of the function to bind on this. What this actually means that you see inside the function handle change, well, we know that in JavaScript, this keyword inside the function is actually referring to the function itself. But what this bind tell the JavaScript or the React engine to just use this keyword which is inside the function to refer the outer class instead of referring to the inner function. So it's just telling the React engine that this keywords which is existed inside the function is actually referring to the class, to the outer class, and it does not refer to the function. Now, if you omit this binding stuff, this function will never work. So you need to remember this one every time. And I also want to mention this expression, which is just say whenever we have the this.state.show, it's not empty, and show h1 tag with the content of the state dot show variable. Now, this simply telling the React engine that, or the JavaScript engine or the browser, if there is no state.show, just don't bother yourself, don't show anything. But if we have a show, uh, continue. Now the thing here is this and whenever you, it just says if the condition on the left is actually achieved, just continue and execute the thing on the right, otherwise just stop here. Alright, so this is pretty much that's it, and thank you very much for watching.